Hello everyone, this is going to be a review video on how to solve an equation versus an inequality. So what you see on the screen on the left side is an equation 3x minus 2 equals 10. And then on the right side you have 3x minus 2 is greater than 10. So step 1 would be the same on both sides. The step 1 would be to add 2 on both sides of the equation. And if I get that ready and you add 2 to both sides, you would do the same thing on the inequality side. Taking the same steps. So step 1 would be to add 2 to both sides. Then I'm going to rewrite it. 3x equals 12 on the equation side, and 3x is greater than 12 on the inequality side. So step 2 would be to divide by 3, the number next to the x. The result would be x equals 4. X equals 4. So step 2 would be to divide 3 on both sides. Using inverse operations, you're dividing. The same thing goes for the inequality. Is greater than 4. So that is the result. X is greater than 4. So just taking a look on the bottom, your equation, when you go and graph it, I'm going to put the 4 directly in the middle. I'm going to count by ones and fill in the numbers in either direction. And then x equals 4 would be a circle right above 4, and I'm going to shade that circle in, and I am not going to point an arrow going to the right or left because x equals 4. So the equation x equals 4 would simply be that. For the inequality x greater than 4, I would start with the same thing, 4 directly in the middle, and then put those numbers in right along either side. And I am going to circle the 4, and then I am not going to shade that in at all. I'm just going to leave it open, and greater than is going to the right. So you're going to circle the 4, or circle right above the 4, leave it open, and leave the circle open, don't shade it in, and then go right to the right because x is greater than 4. Going on to something like these inequalities, very simple. You're just kind of thinking, all right, let's just go ahead and do what I would do to solve an equation. And now you subtract 5 on both sides, you get 3n is greater than 15. You divide by 3 on both sides, and you get n is greater than 5. When you're graphing, you put the 5 directly in the middle, and you fill in the numbers around it. Once you put that 5 in the middle, it's an open circle around and above 5, and greater than is going to the right. And that's basically how you would graph that. When you have 5x plus 8 is less than 43, you would do the same thing, subtract 8 on both sides, and then you would divide by 5. Whatever number is next to the variable, that's what you're going to divide by. And since you have just the x, and you bring down on the left side, you bring that down, you bring the inequality down, and 5 goes into 55 11 times. You will put the 11 directly in the middle of the number line, and then fill in the numbers all around it. At this point, you have x is less than 11. Less than 11, you're going to put a circle directly above 11, and then go and move that arrow to the right. Just draw that arrow to the right, to the left, because that's less than. Anything less than is to the left on a number line. Anything greater than is to the right on a number line. So just to practice the inequality is n is greater than 5. If you take a look at the interval notation, if you look at the graph, 5 is circled, right? And then it goes to positive infinity on to the right side. So the way you write the interval notation is kind of like coordinates, but they're not coordinates. You start at 5 and then you go forever in the positive infinity direction. You have parentheses around each because 5 is not or equal to 5. If it was or equal to 5, that means you would have a closed circle on the graph and you would have a bracket instead of a parenthesis. Since it's just n is greater than 5, 5 is not included. It has to be greater than 5. You put the 5 down, put the parenthesis right next to the 5, and then the infinity symbol, and you have the parenthesis at the infinity symbol as well. All right, and you always have a parenthesis on the infinity side. Going towards the left, you have negative infinity, right? So if you have the negative infinity to the left, the 11, and I'm just going to put the inequality down, the 11 is to the right. The negative infinity is the number or thing, the symbol that goes to the left. So we're going to put a parenthesis and a negative infinity, and we are going to put 11 here with a parenthesis because it's just x is less than 11. It's just like a number line. You're setting it up like a number line. The number line would have 11 to the right-hand side and negative infinity goes to the left. So you're figuring it out just like the number line. And that's it for those two. So one of the big differences of solving an inequality is that when you solve an inequality, when you multiply or divide by a negative value at the end, the last step, when you're multiplying and dividing by a number that is negative, you are going to reverse the inequality symbol. And that's why it's very, very important to remember, try to stay in the positive, but on a question like this, you are going to divide by a negative at the end. Right? You see the negative 2x there, and you know what the first step is, to subtract 5 on both sides. So if you subtract 5 on both sides, you know that you are going to get negative 2x is less than or equal to, and that is going to be 16. Then when you divide by a negative, you're dividing by a negative number. That's exactly when you flip the inequality symbol. This cancels. The x comes down. Instead of less than or equal to, it is greater than or equal to, and it is negative 8. So this is the part that we're talking about. You're dividing by a negative. If you're dividing by a negative, that's when you flip the inequality symbol. If you're multiplying by a negative at the end, that's when you flip the inequality symbol. You never flip the inequality symbol unless you're dividing or multiplying by a negative. And in this case, we are, and that's why we flip that inequality symbol. So just to kind of practice a couple of these questions, I am going to go to number 1 and just go ahead and just subtract 6 like I would normally do. After I subtract 6, then I am going to cancel out the 6's, and I'm going to bring the negative 4n down, and it is greater than, this is 24. Then I divide by negative 4, and that's the part that I have to flip the inequality symbol. I am dividing by a negative 4, and now I have a negative 6. N is less than negative 6. N is less than negative 6. I'm not going to graph it. That's when you flip the inequality symbol. Anytime that you have, I'm going to skip to number 4. Number 4, if you have a negative p on this side, I'm thinking about, okay, what do I do to get that to be a positive p? I could subtract the 56 on both sides, but I am not going to do that. I am going to add p, because once I add p to both sides, that means that I am going to get that p alone. I'm going to isolate the variable. So this becomes 56. The inequality symbol stays the same, and then p comes down. This is p is greater than 56. For number 5, that is the most challenging question, because again, we have x's all over the place. We have distributive property with a negative. Just take it step by step. Actually draw the loops. Negative 2, let me bring down this negative 4x. Negative times a negative, that's positive, that's 6x. 2 times 3. Negative times a positive is negative, negative 8. Bring down the inequality symbol. I have negative 10x plus 4. So here we go. We have to combine like terms. You see there's 3 terms on this left side. We have to combine like terms. This negative 4x plus 6x, that's 2x. Minus 8 is greater than or equal to 10x plus 4. So now I have x's on both sides. Remember, you have to get the x's together. You have to get the x's on one side. So I could either bring the 2x over to the negative 10x or the negative 10x over to the 2x. I would like to stay in the positive. So if I subtract the 2x on both sides, that means I'm going to have negative 12x on that right side. I don't want that. I want a positive. So that means I'm going to take the smaller x and bring it over to the other x. That way, the negative 10x and the positive 10x cancel. You get 12x minus 8 is greater than or equal to 4. You add 8 to both sides. That's a 2-step equation now. And you just kind of rolling because you know what to do. And this is 12x is greater than or equal to 12. And then you divide by a positive. And that means you do not flip the inequality. It's x is greater than or equal to 1. When there's a regions question, we'll go over it. You have to solve the inequalities below, right? So we're going to solve it. This right here, it has, you're looking at it and you say, okay, there's a y over here and there's a y over here. I want to stay in the positive, right? It's not a big deal if you don't. It's just that I want to, because then I don't have to flip the inequality symbol. So I'm going to add the 2y on both sides. After adding the 2y on both sides, that means I'm going to cancel out the 2y's right here, and this is 1.8 plus 1.6 y. You put that in your calculator, you get 1.6. And then you bring down the inequality symbol, and you have 2.2. I'm going to subtract the 1.8 on both sides. And again, I'm going to rewrite what I have. I have 1.6y, that's positive, greater than or equal to, and this is 0.4. when you subtract it. And you divide by 1.6, you divide by 1.6, just as if you were figuring out an equation, solving an equation, and you get 0.4. Let me get this out of here. And you get 0.4 divided by 1.6. And you get 0.25. So y is greater than 0.25. It says here, list three solutions that satisfy the inequality. So I am going to go with exactly 0.25 because it could be equal to that. Then I'll just put 1 and 2. Any number that is greater than or equal to 0.25 satisfies the inequality. That's it. These challenge regions questions, they're not really a challenge. These are regions questions that you are going to have to be able to solve. So let's go over them because this is what the left side is from 2015 and the right side is from 2019. So let's talk about this one because this looks really difficult, but it's not. One step at a time, do the distributive property on the left side and then rewrite. So you have -3 times +4. That is a -12x. Then you have -3 times a -8. That's a +24. I'm just going to rewrite 6x plus 12 minus 9x. Now, I have 3 terms on each side of this inequality. So that means I'm going to have to combine like terms. So we have 7x minus 12x. So if you think, remember, 7x minus 12x, put it in the calculator, it's -5x plus 24. 6x minus 9x, combining like terms, on the same side is -3x plus 12. Now I want to bring the smaller over to the larger. So if you do, you're adding the 5x on both sides. I am going to, on purpose, do it the other way. All right, but I would add the 5x. But I'm going to add the 3x. Just to make you understand that if I do bring the smaller over to the larger, that means I am going to operate in the negative. So this cancels. The 3x's cancel, and this becomes -2x plus 24. The inequality symbol comes down, and this is 12. So now you're going to subtract the 24 from both sides. This cancels. Let me just get a straight line going there. Straighter line. All right, this cancels, and you get -2x. You bring that down. You bring the inequality down just as it is, and this is -12. So at this point, I am going to divide by -2, the number next to the x. That is going to trigger the inequality flipping, right? Because I'm multiplying, I'm dividing by a negative. And if I'm dividing by a negative, that means instead of less than or equal to, I'm going to go greater than or equal to, and that is 6. X is greater than or equal to 6. And you're done. For this one, I'm going to do it again. I'm going to just do I'm going to minus the smaller from the larger. Now I'm going to stay in the positive. So, staying in the positive means that I am not going to have to flip that inequality symbol. I'm going to bring everything down the way it is, and I'm going to bring down plus 0.02x, because that's what this is. I'm going to subtract 2,000 on both sides. This cancels. Then I'm going to have 1,600 is less than 0.02x. I'm going to divide 0.02, divide 0.02. This cancels. X comes down. I'm going to keep the inequality symbol like the way it is. I'm going to grab my calculator. I'm going to go 1,600 divided by 0.02. And I am going to go and get 80,000. Put the comma in. X is greater than 80,000. Those are two regions questions that you could see that you could kind of say, okay, they're going to ask me how to do that. Especially distributing of this negative right here. Yep, they're going to actually, make sure you know how to do that. When you divide or multiply by a negative number, just remember to flip the inequality symbol. Okay, just as a last couple of questions, regions questions. This was on the August 2023 regions. Remember, I said that they're going to ask you to demonstrate that you could distribute a negative. This is it. Basically, this was right from the regions. We have -3 times x, -3x. -3 times -6 is a positive 18. And then you have 2x minus 2. Bring down that inequality. I am going to add the 3x on both sides because that's the way I want to stay in the positive. You don't have to, but it just makes it a lot easier for me that I don't have to remember to flip the inequality symbol. But it's not the end of the world if you do. So now I have a two-step equation. I'm adding 2 to both sides, and I am going to rewrite everything, making sure that the 2's cancel. I have 20 and 5x is greater than 20. Then I divide by 5 on both sides, and you get x is greater than 4. X is greater than 4 is 1. X is greater than 4. Just remember to read from the variable out to the number, and then you'll be fine. All right, so a little bit more difficult, and this was again a regions question, but now there's fractions all over the place, and I'm going to demonstrate one way that you could possibly do it. I'm going to subtract the 1/3 from both sides. Remember, you have to get the x's together. So I'm going to do that. Even though I wouldn't do this, I would add the 2/5 on both sides. I'm going to subtract the 1/3 on both sides. So that means I'm going to purposely go into the negative. All right, and I'm going to draw a nice line. And I am going to cancel out this, and I'm going to put 4, and this is 1/3. And I don't know what this is. So this is x, this is x. So I'm going to grab a calculator, and I'm going to just go and put down negative, clearing this out, and alpha x, negative 2/5. Minus alpha x. Wow. Let me try that again. Negative 2/5 minus alpha x 1/3. And I'm going to see what that comes to. That's a negative 11/15. So I'm going to put minus 11/15 x. Bring down the inequality symbol, bring down the 15. Now, I have an x on one side, the 4 on the I have a 4 and I have a 15, right, on the right side. So I'm going to bring the 4 over to the 15. Minus 4, minus 4. This cancels. You have negative 11/15. X is greater than or equal to 11. So this is the reason why I wanted to do this as far as this way, using this method. A lot of people here, a lot of people around would divide by negative 11 over 15. That's fine. I'm going to use the reciprocal. I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal. And when I multiply by the reciprocal, I am going to remember to flip the inequality, the fraction. So now instead of negative 11 over 15, it is negative 15 over 11 times negative 15 over 11. This cancels with this. This cancels with this. Since I multiplied by a negative, I am going to flip the inequality symbol. This flips. Then I'm going to have 11 times 11. And let me just move this over here just to make sure that that I'm okay, and it won't let me move that over. So let me say 11 over 11 times negative alpha x negative 15 over 11. So that's what I'm doing. I'm just putting this right here on the calculator. So I'm going to press enter, and I get negative 15. So I'm going to put negative 15. So x is less than or equal to negative 15. X is less than or equal to negative 15 is 4. Right? And that is how you would do it. This is an example of multiplying by a negative and then flipping because you multiplied by that negative. Remember to flip, switch, whatever word you want, turn around the inequality symbol when you're multiplying and dividing by a negative. And that's really the difference of solving an equation versus solving an inequality. One more another question you could see on a Regents is this one. You have negative 3x and you have negative 5x together. You're combining those terms. You get negative 8x plus 7 is less than 15. You know at this point that you are going to divide by a negative. I mean, you could read that, right? This is negative 8x. You see it right there. You bring down the negative 8x. This right here is 8. And then you divide by negative 8 on both sides. Once you divide by that negative, that's when you flip the inequality symbol and you get negative 1. Right? X is greater than negative 1. You graph your solution on the number line just by putting negative 1, negative 2, negative 3. You put the negative 1 in the middle of the line and you circle, open circle, and going to the right because it's greater than. Your solution in interval notation would be negative 1 in parentheses right next to negative 1 and the positive infinity in a parenthesis. All right? Because it can't be equal to infinity. And the last question that I'm going to do is basically this one. It says, given negative 7x plus 2 is greater than 58, which number is not in the solution set? So that means you have to figure out basically which number is not in the solution set. So the easiest way to do this, and there are a lot of ways, is to just solve this. This is a pretty easy inequality. So we're just going to solve it by subtracting 2 on both sides. You get a 56 here. You divide by negative 7, divide by negative 7, and you get x. And since you divided by that negative, you flip the inequality symbol, and you get 8, negative 8, because positive divided by a negative. So x is less than negative 8. Less than negative 8. So negative 8 can't be in the solution. Which number is not in the solution set? Whoa. So negative 8 is not in the solution set. Negative 9 is because that's less than negative 8. Negative 10 is because that's less than negative 8. Negative 11 is because that's less than negative 8. The only one is that is not in the solution set is negative 8, and that's 1. Remember, you could always use substitution. You have negative 7 times x, which is negative 8, plus 2. You substituted this possible answer in, this negative 8. You get negative 7 times negative 8, and you get 56. 56 plus 2 is 58. So that means 58 is not greater than 58. So that doesn't work. And no, it's not in the solution set. If you substituted this negative 9 in, or negative 10 in, you would get 70 plus 2. 70 plus 2, if you substituted the negative 10 in, 70 plus 2 would be 72. 72 is greater than 58. So you see how it kind of works. You can use substitution if you don't want to solve it. All right, and so negative 8 would be the number that is not in the solution set. All right, and that's about it. Hopefully that helped. See you next time.